Welcome back. We're continuing today to look at this small run batch kit for the Peckett Gamecock loco. So if you remember last time I had built up the cranks and these are now on. I actually did one other step first, which I just need to discuss before we move on to the cranks, and that is here. This is the bottom of the ash pans visible through the side of the chassis frame. That's actually another piece that's laminated on the inside of the chassis frames this time. It's a bit weird because the instructions, obviously the parts either weren't etched the right shape or there was an issue, I don't know. But the instructions tell you that you have to file off some of this cross member here to get them to align properly, but I couldn't work out how on earth you were supposed to get a file in between the pulley and the side frame to file that off. So what I've done is I actually filed the laminates back before I fitted them. So basically I filed a notch into them further, so that just to the point where they won't appear through the hole. And then I tinned the laminates, held them in place with some with these soldering tweezers. If you think about normal tweezers, if I could find them, normal tweezers, and you squeeze things together, squeeze them together to do stuff. These are nice because wood, so I don't burn my fingers, but also they hold together closed until you apply pressure, and when you apply pressure they open, which meant I could, if I show you, I could align the laminate and then like that, and then hold it and get the soldering iron in to melt the solder where I'd tinned it and get it to stick. So that worked well. I mean, they are a bit of a heat sink on something this small, but I did manage to do that with the normal soldering iron without melting the wheels, which is the important point, because you're quite close to the wheels and these have plastic centres, so you have to be a bit careful. But I did that, and then I went on to fitting the outside cranks. So let me just put this back to the right position and I can talk about it. So you fit them by using Loctite. The stuff I use is this 243. I've used it on all the models that I've designed and built where you have to seal parts like this. And basically you put Loctite in the hole on the crank, push it onto the axle in the right position, and you start on one side by putting the cranks to the 6 o'clock position, wait till they're on, turn it round, and then do the ones on the other side to the 9 o'clock position. And in theory that should be it. Should be nice and straightforward. You do have to be careful, of course. If you get Loctite into the bearings for the wheels, then the wheel won't turn anymore. Bit of a problem. And also, as I discussed in a previous video, these axles aren't very long. So I cut these myself longer than the ones that were supplied with the kit, because I was worried the ones in the kit weren't long enough. And I cut them to match the guide on the edge. And I still don't think they're quite long enough. If you look, you can see that they don't actually come all the way to the face of the crank. So they're not, the whole crank isn't affixed to the axles, just the bottom so many layers. It would have been much better. Oh, and also the cranks are very, very close to the side frames. Now, I don't think that matters. I think there is enough clearance, and as I say, I can spin the pulley around and everything moves nicely. I mean, you can see I can move it. I can move the pulley, and the cranks are moving nicely around to the, there you go, at the 12 o'clock position. So that all works, but I think it would have been much better had I had slightly longer axles, even if I'd had to maybe file them back afterwards. I don't know. But it did make fitting them quite tricky. I mean, just pushing them onto the end of the axle is hard when there's very little axle, and you don't want to open up the hole in the cranks too much, because otherwise then they're sloppy and you can't get their Loctite to grip nice and tightly. So I think this is the best I was ever going to get, and they're on. It all moves. Nothing's locked solid. So I'm pretty happy with that. And in fact, you can see that the instructions suggest that you use the coupling rods to check that you've got everything nicely positioned, because obviously if you don't have the axles paired up, the cranks paired up properly, then either coupling rod won't fit, or when you try and turn it, it'll lock. But you can see that that's a coupling rod on one side, and I can turn it, and it's turning nicely and going down to the bottom. So they're on. Yeah. not fun. I did it in a couple of goes. The first time I had one fall off. I was fairly certain I managed to bind one of the axles in the bearing. I managed to get it loose again, but it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't perfect. So fingers crossed it all holds. As I say, I'm not actually driving the axles via the cranks. Both axles are driven by the motor and the gears, so the cranks aren't actually providing too much drive. They're just being driven round. So hopefully, as long as there's enough Loctite in, they will just hold in place. Yeah, it would. As I say, I'm not sure what a better solution would have been. Longer cranks and longer axles and filing them back might have helped. I don't know, but yeah, it's been the trickiest bit so far to get them on. As I say, building them up was nice and easy with the resistant soldering unit and things, and tapping them and putting the screws in and everything all went really nice and easy. But actually fitting them was a bit more of a challenge. But they're on, so there we go. So I think the next thing I have to make up is the connecting the rest of the rods, the rest of the outside motion, which includes some pins and some crosshead, and making up the crossheads, which are in two parts, and I've soldered together again. So again, that's going to be another fun challenge. But the kit's good, as I say. I mean, just as in the same way that the cranks were on etches that had linement jigs built in, so are the crossheads. So the crossheads are these two pieces, and again, so there's a basically they're in two halves. There's a crosshead for either side of the loco, and these two pieces are laminated together with a pin, well, a bit of wire, I think, actually in this case, in between the two layers as you laminate them, and then they're cut in half at this guide here, and that makes up the piston rods. The crosshead and the piston rods. So that, hopefully, I think should be nice and straightforward again. As I say, there's guides and everything, and then there'll be some more connections to make, but to the other bits of the motion. But hopefully, fingers crossed, it doesn't look too terrible from the instructions. So yeah, doesn't look like I've achieved much, and as you know, step forwards in the instructions, it hasn't. But getting those on is a big step, because obviously, if I can't get those on, then nothing's it's not going to work properly or look properly. So happy with that. I am beginning to think I don't know when I'm going to paint this, because obviously I've now got wheels, motion, and stuff that will need painting at some point without it all binding up. But I think experience from before, even when if you prime and paint the chassis, you know, you can't do it until you've got the wheels trapped in, because otherwise you've got to solder, and you just end up taking the paint off anyway. So I think there's going to be a combination of masking and painting to get this all done is going to be tricky, but I think this is the way to go. I think getting it all built up first is probably wise. That might be a decision that comes back to bite me. We shall see. But for now, this is the route I'm going. So yeah, hopefully next time I will have the crossheads and piston rods, etc. But we'll see. And as I say, don't forget to subscribe, and then you'll know when I've got that far. Thanks for watching.